There's a question I've been asked many times, and perhaps you've asked it yourself too. It's usually phrased as a complaint. Why does it have to be so hard? We whisper it in moments of frustration, shout it in moments of desperation, and quietly think it when no one's watching. Somewhere deep inside us is a yearning for the road to smooth out, for the friction to ease, for the wind to finally be at our backs. But what if that question, why is it so hard, is pointing us in the wrong direction? What if life isn't meant to be easier, but instead calling us to get better? We've been conditioned to chase ease. Look around. We've automated, optimized, and streamlined nearly every part of daily life. We tap a screen and a meal appears. We send a message and it crosses the world in seconds. There is nothing inherently wrong with these advancements, but they have shaped our expectations. We begin to assume that if something is difficult, it must be broken. That if something takes time, effort, or repetition, we must be doing something wrong. And that's where we lose the plot. Because growth isn't easy. It was never meant to be. You see, the purpose of life, our actual purpose, isn't comfort. It's progress. It's growth. It's to become the kind of person who can face adversity not with resentment, but with resolve. The real fulfillment, the kind that sticks with you, doesn't come from finding an easy path. It comes from discovering who you become when you walk the hard one. When we wish things were easier, what we're really saying is that we want the reward without the responsibility. We want the results without the repetition. But it doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't operate that way. Muscles only grow when you apply pressure. Calluses form only after friction. Diamonds, as the saying goes, are made under pressure. The process isn't the punishment, it's the prerequisite. Let me offer a different lens. Imagine a young tree growing in a windy environment. It bends, leans, struggles. Now imagine we build a glass dome around it to protect it from the wind, to make life easier, no more resistance. But what happens? The roots don't grow deep, the trunk doesn't get stronger, the tree becomes fragile, so when the dome eventually comes down, because it always does, the first strong gust topples it. That's what happens to people who only wish for life to be easier. We become fragile, we become brittle, and worst of all, we become disconnected from our potential. Now, I'm not here to glorify suffering for the sake of suffering. This isn't about grinding yourself into the ground or romanticizing hardship. It's about recognizing that the difficulties you face are not signals to stop. They're invitations to evolve. Every challenge this life's asking you, are you ready to grow? That's the moment when something shifts. When instead of asking, why is this happening to me, you begin to ask, what is this trying to teach me? That's when the frustration turns into fuel, because the moment you stop resisting the difficulty and start leaning into the lesson, that's the moment you get better. And getting better, not easier, is the game changer. It's what separates those who make progress from those who stay stuck. It's what defines leaders, innovators, and change makers. They aren't immune to hardship. They've just trained themselves to see it differently. They've developed the discipline to get better instead of wasting time wishing circumstances were different. Think about it. When has wishing something were easier ever made it so? When has hoping the obstacle would disappear ever led to breakthrough? It doesn't. But getting better, that changes everything. Because when you get better, the same obstacle no longer looks as tall. The same task no longer feels as intimidating. You start to move with clarity, with confidence, with purpose. And here's the best part. The moment you start focusing on getting better, you realize the power was never out there, it was always in you. You stop outsourcing your progress to fate or luck or conditions. You take responsibility. You become the kind of person who says, this is hard and I will rise to meet it. That doesn't mean you won't fail. You will. That's part of the process. But failure in the pursuit of growth is not something to fear, it's something to embrace. Every stumble holds a clue. Every misstep sharpens your awareness. Every detour strengthens your resolve. The only real failure is refusing to try because the road looks hard. There's a story I love, maybe you've heard it. A student says to the teacher, "Master, the path is difficult." And the teacher responds, "Yes, because you are meant to grow stronger." It's simple, and yet it captures everything. The path isn't meant to be paved for you. You're meant to learn how to walk it. And in walking it, you become the person who no longer needs the path to change because you've changed. So the next time you find yourself wishing life were easier, pause, breathe, and instead ask, what if this moment is the exact opportunity I need to get better? What if this challenge, this friction, this obstacle, what if it's not here to stop me, but to shape me? Because the truth is, ease doesn't lead to excellence. Resistance is what forges resilience. Difficulty is what draws out depth. And progress, real progress, begins the moment we stop wishing for ease and start committing to better. We've been taught to see obstacles as interruptions. Something goes wrong, a plan falls apart, and we immediately think something is broken. We treat setbacks like detours, like we've taken a wrong turn. We assume the path forward is supposed to be clear, smooth, and efficient, and anything less must mean we're failing. But what if that assumption is what's keeping us stuck? What if the obstacle isn't blocking the path? What if it is the path? Every meaningful endeavor in life, whether it's building a business, repairing a relationship, mastering a skill, or discovering your purpose, comes with resistance. Not occasionally, not by accident, every time. And yet we're often caught off guard by the friction, like we were expecting the mountain to move itself just because our intentions were pure. We've confused ease with alignment. We've convinced ourselves that if we're on the right path, it will feel smooth. But alignment isn't proven when things are easy. It's revealed when things are hard, and we still keep going. See, most people misunderstand the role of adversity. They believe it's the enemy. That when life throws challenges their way, it's because they're being punished or pushed off course. But adversity is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign you're doing something important. It shows up not to stop you, but to shape you. It's there to ask you a simple but powerful question: how much do you actually want this? And that question is essential, because the truth is, most of us like the idea of success more than we like the process of earning it. We want results without discomfort. We want transformation without tension. But life doesn't work that way. Growth only happens in the presence of resistance. Think about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. The struggle to break free from the cocoon isn't just part of the journey, it's what gives the butterfly strength to fly. If you cut the cocoon to help, you don't free the butterfly. You weaken it, it emerges unprepared for the world it was meant to enter. It's the tension, the fight, the pressure. That's what makes flight possible. The same is true for us. The moments we feel stuck, blocked, or burdened are often the moments where the most transformation is available, if we're willing to stay with the discomfort long enough to grow through it. But instead of embracing the process, we often retreat. We blame, we wish it would go away, we fantasize about shortcuts. And by doing so, we miss the very training that would equip us for what's next. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. It's steep. The air is thin. Every step burns. Now imagine someone offers to airlift you to the top. Tempting, right? But here's the problem. You don't earn the summit that way. You skip the part that builds you. You miss the learning, the resilience, the endurance, the strength, all forged step by step. And when the next mountain comes, and it always does, you won't be ready. We need to stop looking at obstacles as problems and start seeing them as invitations, because that's what they really are, invitations to rise, to become someone stronger, wiser, more grounded, someone who no longer needs the road to be easy because they've become strong enough to walk it as it is. And yes, that requires a shift in mindset. It requires you to move from avoidance to awareness, from frustration to focus, from seeing obstacles as personal attacks to understanding them as personal growth opportunities. This shift changes everything. When we reframe adversity not as the enemy, but as the environment where we grow, we begin to meet hard things with curiosity instead of resistance. We stop asking, why me, and begin to ask, what now? We stop hoping for less pressure and start preparing for more purpose. Now let me be clear, this isn't about toxic positivity or pretending every hardship is a gift wrapped in a bow. It's not about enjoying pain. It's about learning from it. It's about recognizing that while you may not have chosen the obstacle, you always get to choose how you respond to it, and in that choice, you reclaim your power. That's what great leaders do. They don't crumble under pressure, they rise in it. Not because they enjoy the struggle, but because they understand what is shaping in them. They know the difference between something that's hard and something that's harmful. And they trust that the process, even the messy, painful part, is forging something meaningful. Obstacles clarify what matters. They strip away the noise. They demand focus. When things are easy, it's easy to be distracted. But when the stakes are high and the path is steep, we're forced to prioritize. We're forced to choose what we're willing to fight for. And in that choice, we find our values, our strength, our voice. The goal isn't to live a life without obstacles. That life doesn't exist. The goal is to become the kind of person who is no longer afraid of them. The kind of person who sees difficulty not as a barrier, but as a bridge, who understands that on the other side of every challenge is a version of you that didn't exist before. Someone more equipped, more compassionate, more capable. So the next time you face a wall, don't ask the wall to move. Ask yourself how you're going to climb. Don't ask for the storm to pass. Ask what kind of sailor it's making you. Don't waste energy wishing the road were easier. Spend your energy becoming someone who can walk it. Because the obstacle is not in the way, it is the way. One of the most disempowering beliefs we can hold is that our lives are the result of what happens to us. That we are passengers, not pilots. That our direction is determined by forces outside our control, by where we were born, what people say, or what luck delivers. And while it's true that we don't choose the conditions we start with, we do choose the posture we take in response. That choice changes everything. We've all had moments when it feels like the world is conspiring against us. Plans unravel, people disappoint us, circumstances turn sour. And in those moments, it's so tempting to point outward, to say, if only this hadn't happened, or if only they hadn't done that. Blame is comfortable. It gives us something to hold on to when the ground shakes. But blame is also a cage. It tricks us into believing we are powerless. Here's the truth. Circumstances may shape your environment, but only you can shape your response. You're not just a product of what happens. You are the author of what happens next. And authors don't surrender the pen when the plot gets messy. They write their way forward. Think of every great story you've ever read or watched. The hero never begins in perfect conditions. There's always conflict. There's always adversity. And what makes the story worth telling isn't what happened to the hero, it's what the hero did about it. It's how they refused to stay stuck in the first chapter. It's how they changed the narrative. You have that same power. Every day, in every decision, you're writing the next line. And the most remarkable thing is, you don't have to wait for the perfect moment to take the pen back. You can do it now. Because authorship isn't about controlling every detail. It's about taking ownership of your direction, your effort, and your mindset. Some people spend their entire lives waiting for the conditions to change. They say, I'll be happy when things calm down, or I'll go after my goals once I get a break. But the break never comes the way they expect it to. And so they stay stuck, not because the world held them back, but because they handed their future to chance. But others, those who lead, those who build, those who grow, they don't wait for ideal conditions. They act anyway. They don't see obstacles as stop signs. They see them as creative challenges. They rewrite the story, not because it's easy, but because they believe they can. And belief matters, not just in theory, in practice. Because belief determines behavior. When you believe you're powerless, you hesitate, you procrastinate. You protect yourself from effort because effort without belief feels pointless. But when you believe that your actions matter, even in small ways, you start to move, you start to risk, you start to build momentum. That's the power of authorship. It's not about knowing exactly where the story will end. It's about deciding who you want to be while the story unfolds. It's about choosing integrity when shortcuts appear, resilience when it would be easier to give up, and courage when fear is loud. Now, this doesn't mean life is fair. It's not. Some people start with more advantages. Some face setbacks that seem relentless. But fairness was never the promise. Growth was. And no matter where you begin, growth is possible if you choose to take ownership of your part. Ownership is the hinge between where you are and where you could be. It's the quiet decision to stop saying someone should fix this and start saying I will be the one who changes it. It's the shift from asking for easier conditions to becoming someone who can rise regardless of conditions. You see this in people who faced unimaginable difficulty and still find a way to rise. They didn't wait for the pain to disappear. They moved forward with the pain. They didn't wait to be rescued. They rescued themselves. Not all at once, often slowly, often quietly, but they did it because they refused to let their past define their future. I once met a man who spent 10 years building a business that ultimately failed. He lost his savings, his confidence, and for a while his sense of direction. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, at some point, I had to stop being the victim of my failure and start being the author of my comeback. That's the mindset. That's the moment the story changes. And it's a moment available to every single one of us, but it requires a decision. A decision to stop outsourcing our power to things we can't control and instead focus relentlessly on the things we can. Our work ethic, our attitude, our willingness to learn, our courage to try again. You don't have to have all the answers to start rewriting your story. You just have to stop waiting for someone else to write it for you. You don't have to wait for inspiration to strike. Action breeds clarity, and small steps taken with intention are far more powerful than big ideas that never leave the page. The pen is in your hand. The page is blank. The next chapter hasn't been written yet. What will you say? Who will you become? Not every part of your life will be your fault, but every part of your future can be your responsibility. That's not pressure, that's power. And when you step into that power, you don't need life to be easier. You become someone who's ready to get better, to take ownership, and to move forward. Because you are not just living your story, you are writing it. There's a word we don't hear often in a culture obsessed with shortcuts and speed. It's not flashy, not exciting, and rarely goes viral. But it's the difference between people who drift and people who lead. It's the word discipline. And it may not sound glamorous, but it is the foundation for every kind of freedom that matters. We've been sold a version of freedom that says comfort is the goal, that if we just work hard enough, earn enough, automate enough, we can finally reach that magical place where we don't have to do the hard things anymore. That we'll be free when we no longer feel pressure, when nothing is expected of us, when we can relax and everything runs on its own. But that's not freedom, that's sedation. And it leads to a life that may be easy, but ultimately empty. Real freedom, the kind that leads to growth, confidence, and purpose, doesn't come from avoiding effort. It comes from mastering effort. It comes from building the internal strength to do what needs to be done, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Discipline is misunderstood. People think of it as restriction, as punishment, as rigidity. But discipline, rightly understood, is a gift. It's not what limits you, it's what liberates you. It's what gives you the ability to keep your promises to yourself, to follow through when no one's watching, to rise above emotion and act on intention. Without discipline, we become slaves to our mood. We do what we feel like doing, but growth doesn't happen on the days you feel like it. It happens on the days you don't, and you do it anyway. When we rely only on motivation, we become inconsistent. Motivation is a spark. It's valuable, but it's fleeting. It's the surge that gets you started, not the system that keeps you going. Discipline is what steps in when the spark fades. It's what makes you show up again and again, long after the initial enthusiasm is gone. And this is where mastery begins. Mastery is not a result of natural talent alone. It's not about genius or luck. It's about practice, repetition, intentional, focused work done over time. And yes, that work is often mundane, it's often difficult, but it is through the doing that you become someone new. We often admire people who seem to make things look effortless, an athlete, a musician, a leader, and we forget the years of effort we didn't see. The mornings they got up early, the evenings they stayed late, the days they kept going when progress was slow and results were invisible. That's discipline. That's where excellence lives. But here's the irony. The more disciplined you are, the more freedom you actually have. When you train yourself to follow through, you free yourself from regret. When you develop skills through consistent effort, you free yourself from fear. When you build structure into your life, you create space for creativity, for joy, for confidence. Discipline doesn't narrow your world, it expands it. Because suddenly you're not reacting to everything. You're creating, you're leading. You're choosing who you want to be, not just responding to how you feel. And it doesn't have to be massive, dramatic effort. It's often small, daily choices that add up over time. Waking up and committing to a routine, turning off distractions to do focused work, saying no to short-term pleasure to protect long-term purpose. These things compound. They build character. They build identity. You don't become disciplined overnight. You become disciplined in moments, in decisions. You build it like a muscle, one rep at a time. And over time, you begin to trust yourself in a new way. That's one of the most underrated benefits of discipline. It builds self-trust, the knowledge that you can count on you. Most people lose that trust. They break promises to themselves so often that eventually they stop believing anything they say. I'll start tomorrow. It becomes a habit, not a plan. But when you commit to showing up daily, not perfectly, but consistently, you start to rebuild that trust. You start to believe that you are someone who follows through, and that belief changes your posture, it changes your presence, it changes how you walk into rooms, how you face setbacks, how you lead others, because when you know you have the ability to do hard things, you stop needing life to be easy. Discipline also creates clarity. When you choose what matters most and build your habits around that, you eliminate the noise. You no longer chase every trend or opportunity, you focus. You go deep instead of wide. And that depth is where impact lives. You start to realize that comfort is overrated, that growth is better than ease, that the satisfaction of having done the work is so much greater than the short-term pleasure of avoiding it. And eventually you reach a point where the things that once felt like sacrifices become non-negotiables. The discipline that felt hard becomes who you are. And when people ask you how you got there, the answer isn't glamorous, it's not some secret. It's simple, but not easy. You showed up again and again. That's what real strength looks like. Not talent, not luck, but consistency, character, the willingness to do the work even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So no, the goal isn't for life to get easier, the goal is to get better. And one of the most powerful ways we get better is by choosing discipline over comfort, purpose over pleasure, mastery over mediocrity. Because in the end, discipline doesn't limit your freedom, it creates it. The ability to choose your actions, shape your life, and build something meaningful comes not from hoping things get easier, but from becoming the kind of person who's ready when they don't. That's how you lead, that's how you grow, and that's how you get free. There's a quiet trap that many of us fall into without even realizing it. It's the belief that fulfillment lies just on the other side of achievement. That once we hit that milestone, get that promotion, finish that project, make that money, then we'll feel what we've been chasing. We believe success is the destination, so we run faster, we push harder, we delay joy, rest, even presence, thinking that when we finally arrive, it'll all be worth it. But here's the truth we rarely want to hear. There is no arrival. There is no final destination where everything is perfect, complete, and effortless. Life isn't a race to a finish line. It's a process, a rhythm, a journey. And if we're only living for the result, we're missing the very point of the path. This is why so many people feel unfulfilled, even after hitting the goals they set. They worked, sacrificed, and arrived at a place they thought would satisfy them, only to realize the feeling was fleeting, because goals, while important, are not the source of meaning. They're markers, not purpose. The real value is who we become on the way to them. Fulfillment doesn't live at the end of the road. It lives in how we walk it. When we focus only on outcomes, we start to treat the journey like a means to an end. We endure the work, we tolerate the struggle, we push through the process, not because we love it, but because we're hoping to escape it. And in doing so, we miss the chance to grow from it. But the journey, that's where the transformation happens. That's where the learning lives. That's where character is shaped. Every setback, every detour, every slow day, those aren't distractions. They are the work. They are the pieces of the path that make us stronger, wiser, more resilient. We don't grow when we arrive. We grow while we're moving. The most successful and fulfilled people don't love the grind because it's glamorous. They love it because it's shaping them into who they want to be. They understand that discomfort is a teacher, that repetition is a forge, that staying present in the process is how they become excellent, not just at what they do, but in who they are. It's easy to romanticize the end result, to imagine a future where everything is calm and perfect and resolved, but that's not life. Life is dynamic. It evolves. And if you're not growing with it, you're falling behind. The reward isn't peace without struggle. It's knowing that you're doing something that matters, something that calls you to become more. This mindset shift is crucial, because if you think success is only found when things are done, you'll constantly feel behind. You'll live with low-grade anxiety, always chasing, never arriving. But if you can learn to see value in the process itself, you unlock joy right where you are. There's a difference between ambition and attachment. Ambition says, let's grow, let's build, let's become. Attachment says, until I get there, I'm not enough. And that second mindset is poison. It robs the present of its power. It keeps you perpetually unsatisfied, always waiting, always measuring yourself by a finish line that keeps moving. But when you embrace the journey, you stop needing to prove something. You start living from purpose instead of pressure. You start to enjoy the day-to-day, not because it's easy, but because it's real, because it matters, because it's making you better. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have goals. Goals give us direction, but they are not the meaning of our work. They are the milestones that help us stay oriented. The deeper meaning comes from how we pursue them. Are we cutting corners to get there faster? Are we grinding ourselves down, trying to outpace others? Or are we showing up with integrity, presence, and a willingness to grow? There's a reason we admire those who pursue excellence, not just results. Excellence is about how you travel, not just where you end up. It's about staying true to your values, even when it's inconvenient. It's about doing your best, even when no one's watching. It's about choosing mastery over applause. And in that choice, something powerful happens. We find peace in progress. We stop needing constant validation because we know we're living in alignment. We're no longer chasing happiness, we're practicing it. This kind of mindset is rare, but it's available to anyone. It doesn't require talent or status. It requires presence, intention, gratitude. It requires the ability to look at where you are today, no matter how far you are from the goal, and say, this matters. This counts. Think about a musician practicing scales. It's not flashy, it's not exciting, but in those quiet, deliberate moments, something beautiful is being built. Discipline is being cultivated, skill is being sharpened, passion is being deepened. It's not just practice, it's purpose in motion. That's what the journey is. Not a waiting room for something better, but a workshop for becoming better. Not a delay of life, but the very place where life unfolds. When we start to see it that way, everything shifts. The obstacles become opportunities, the routine becomes ritual, the effort becomes meaning. We stop asking how much longer until I get there, and start asking who am I becoming as I walk? Because in the end, no one remembers the trophy. They remember how you played, how you showed up, how you made people feel, and how you allowed the journey to shape you into someone worth following. So don't wait to feel fulfilled. Don't put off joy until the goal is reached. Live it now. Lean into the challenge. Love the craft. Grow in the grit. Because the real reward isn't out there waiting for you. It's already here, waiting to be noticed. The journey is not the obstacle, it is the gift. And if you pay attention, if you stay committed, if you stay present, you'll discover that becoming is even more meaningful than arriving. That's why we don't wish it was easier. We welcome the journey, and we get better.